Welcome to this webinar from the Data Protection Excellence Network and Straits Interactive. I'm going to be introducing our speakers, and it's my honor to introduce Dr. Yudhishthira. He played a big part in terms of drafting the law and being part of the unit that prepared Asia in terms of rolling out the data protection law.
So this is a good progress from Indonesia. So to make sure that as a citizen, we have the right how to protect our data.
We have Dr. Fatri Tash. He is the co-founder and director of Zynexis International. And Zynexis is one of the companies that's won the tender, of course, working along with us to assist in the rollout of the law with regards to the data protection officer, in Indonesia.
Yes, we are very excited and thankful that the PDP Act is finally available to be enforced. Now, I know that there are a lot of companies, especially in the industrial sectors in Indonesia, that are now thinking of starting an initiative. So the level of knowledge that they have in terms of how to go about starting an initiative, basically to start complying to the PDP Act, will still be very, very low. So that would be a homework for all of us to help these companies to set themselves up.
We also have Satrio Wibowo, and he's the lead data protection consultant from Zynexis, and he's actually working very closely with ComInfo as they roll out the data protection law.
Yes, right now we are finishing the SKKNI. We call it SKKNI. It's a National Work Competency Standard that focusing on the personal data protection. And this standard will be used by certification for the DPO in Indonesia.
We also have Andy. Andy is our lead consultant in Indonesia.
It is a very honor to me to discuss more about data protection law in Indonesia. Finally, after long discussion until 7 or 8 years ago, we have just the draft bill and we don't know so many breach that happened in Indonesia and we couldn't anticipate such things. And luckily, by today, we have that law. Hopefully, we can manage such breach in Indonesia and we can manage and help industry to comply with the data protection law.
I think everyone will want to look at how this is different from the other ASEAN laws that are linked to GDPR, but yet there's also uniqueness of the data protection law in Indonesia. And then we'll be asking, what is the roadmap? What should companies do? And finally, ladies and gentlemen, we will be talking about the implications for ASEAN.
We have many laws, we have many regulations that cover or that are dealing with personal data. I think we have more than 32 regulations from different sectors. Therefore, we need such umbrella regulation to harmonize such regulation. And this point about digital transformation, because now I think due to digital economy, so there's many digital platforms that process many personal data. How to make sure that they are processing our personal data in well managed. So this law basically apply to every person, including corporation, public bodies or public organization, government. So the same thing that the law apply to not only located in Indonesia, but also outside of jurisdiction of Republic Indonesia, which has legal consequences.
I think the applicability of the extraterritorial provision probably the same with what we have in GDPR.
In this law, if I remember, there's around maximum 2% of the annual revenue or annual acceptance of the violation variable. But it depends on the violation. The technology of visual data process is gradually growing. Let's say, for example, every person, they also have data processing devices and also CCTV. So we just want to make sure that the result of the CCTV or the image is only be used for specific purpose.
Actually, this is about the cultural aspect. This is how we provide time limit to organization to make sure that within there is any request from the data subject, they need to take the action as soon as possible. Because in Indonesia, that actually data subject is our priority, right?
Well, it remains to be seen how the about to be established regulatory agency will enforce these provisions, because firstly, the agency must set up a court. They must ensure that everyone related to any investigation would be fully qualified, understand how to go about evaluating a particular incident, understand how to judge a particular finding from an incident. And based on that, they will then issue a recommendation on how that case should be addressed, should be decided. Some of the bigger companies in Indonesia have realized that even though there's a 2-year transition period, they know that they are exposed to additional legal risks. and they are now scrambling to set up internal processes.
So Dr. Fatri, can you tell everyone what is being done in this area? Because I believe there's a shortage of DPOs.
We took a sample of a typical company in Indonesia, and we looked at how many companies in a particular sector would be exposed to risk related to PDP law. We came up with a number of around 2 million registered companies in Indonesia. Now, based on these numbers, we came up with roughly a figure of about 100,000 DPO required by Indonesia in the next 3, 4, 5 years.
SKKNI contains a collection of competency unit, and this draft right now, SKKNI PDP, right now is on final formulation stage. In the next week or following week we will conduct a national convention to introduce the draft and gathering final input from our stakeholders.
So you are saying that there will be a national competency standards, right? And then from there, if I got you right, you will put a roadmap towards international certification,
Yes.
where Indonesia will recognize international standards like IAPP, as well as from OSAC in the GRC aspect. Dr. Fatri, I want to go back to what you said just now. So you are saying that there's going to be a shortage of 100,000 DPOs?
Yes, there are few options available at the moment, unfortunately. One would be to leverage the DPO that you already have within the region and then add the knowledge of the existing DPO with the specific issues or specific provisions stipulated in the Indonesian PDP law, plus making sure that once the national competency standard is formally established, map the existing qualification, the existing certification to make sure that they meet all requirements within the competency. The second option would be trying to find a third party, DPO as a service company in Indonesia that would help them to implement, at least in the initial stages, whilst at the same time use the period available to start developing their own internal capability by maybe recruiting or perhaps reassigning people within the company to be sent to a certification program so that they can build their own competency internally.
Let's talk about the implications for ASEAN.
We understand that our founder of ASEAN already have their Personal Data Protection Act. We have Malaysia, we have Singapore, Philippines, Thailand, and now we have Indonesia. Next law is Vietnam. I think it is a really good timing, and of course it will give a big implication as we understand the objective of ASEAN as an economic community to promote the digital economy. And I think this is the commitment of the ASEAN stakeholder by having that data protection law to make sure the data of people are secure, especially when we talk about cross-border trade leading to the international data transfer.
ASEAN companies, I believe, have already established a strong data protection framework, not necessarily related to personal information, but perhaps something more generic. For example, these companies might have a ISO 27001 ISMS framework implemented as part of their management system. Now, what they can do is leverage the availability of this framework, but to expand the scope of its implementation, the scope of its certification, to include their entities in Indonesia, making sure that all the processing areas of personal information, whether it's in electronic form as well as in paper form, would be included. Then what they can do is to integrate the existing management system with the PIMS, the ISO 27701, to ensure that all the relevant controls related to protection of personal information are put in place.
If you are operating in ASEAN, as we heard, all the founding members of ASEAN now have a data protection law. You've heard from our panel of speakers that whatever processing you do, you should have a legal justification, a legal basis. And we also from Dr. Fatri that all these practices are already well established. What we now have is a culture, a business culture of ensuring that personal data is protected.
For more data protection resources, visit www.dpaxnetwork.org, the Data Protection Excellence Network, and sign up for free as a member to have full access to all content. Do also like and follow us on Facebook and LinkedIn if you found this useful.